The fabric tore before anyone could breathe. Phones lifted. Gasps rippled through the room. He hadn't planned to touch her, until he saw the jacket. In that moment, control slipped, and everyone watching realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a line being crossed. No one stopped him. Not the security at the doors. Not the executives frozen mid-conversation. Not even her. This was a charity gala. Glass walls, white lights, polished smiles. The kind of place where reputations were protected at all costs. He was known here. Calm. Measured. Untouchable. A CEO who never raised his voice, never lost control, never gave anyone a reason to whisper his name after events like this. Until now. The jacket hit the marble floor like a confession. Her breath caught as she realized something far more terrifying than the stares around them. He wasn't looking at the crowd anymore. He was looking at her. Not with anger. Not with jealousy. But with the kind of focus that meant a decision had already been made. Because that jacket didn't just belong to another man. It belonged to someone who should have never crossed paths with her. And the moment he recognized it, he understood exactly how exposed she really was. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. If you were in her place, standing there while everyone watched, would you trust the man who just crossed the line, or the stranger who gave you the jacket? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And if stories like this pull you in, subscribe, because this is only the beginning. The room didn't erupt the way people expected. There was no shouting. No scrambling security. No dramatic exit. Just silence. The kind that presses against the chest and makes people suddenly aware of their own breathing. She stood there, arms bare now, heat crawling up her neck as eyes burned into her skin. She could feel the weight of every stare, but none of them scared her the way his did. Because he still hadn't stepped back. He reached down slowly, picked up the torn jacket from the floor, and for the first time since this began, his expression changed. Not anger. Recognition. Her stomach dropped. She knew that look. It was the same look he'd worn months ago when he'd quietly shut down a boardroom with a single sentence. The look that meant something irreversible had just clicked into place. "You shouldn't be wearing this," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. She swallowed. He cut his gaze to the jacket again. The lining. The stitching. The small, nearly invisible emblem sewn near the inner seam. Most people wouldn't notice it. But he did. Because it belonged to a world he'd spent years keeping far away from her. The crowd began to murmur now, whispers sliding across the marble floors like smoke. Who was she? Why was he reacting like this? Why didn't anyone stop him? She took a step back, finally breaking the invisible line between them. "Please," she said quietly. "Not here." That was when he lifted his eyes to the room. And everything shifted. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't explain. He didn't apologize. He simply looked around, at the phones, the faces, the witnesses, and let them see exactly how little their presence mattered to him in that moment. Then he turned back to her. "You think this is about jealousy?" he asked softly. Her chest tightened. "Because it's not." He leaned in just enough that only she could hear him. "That jacket tells me someone found you before I could." Her pulse spiked. Found her. Before she could respond, someone cleared their throat nearby. A board member. Nervous. Trying to regain control of a night that was slipping fast. "Perhaps," the man said carefully, "we should move this conversation somewhere more private." The CEO didn't even look at him. "No," he said. One word. Final. And that was when she understood something terrifying. This wasn't a mistake he was trying to undo. This was a line he was choosing to cross. Before we go any further, let me ask you something honestly. If you were standing there, with everyone watching, and the most powerful man in the room refusing to step back, would you feel protected or trapped? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And if stories like this pull you in, subscribe, because this only gets more dangerous from here. The music resumed awkwardly, as if the band had been instructed to pretend nothing was wrong. But nothing was normal anymore. She turned to leave. That was her mistake. His hand closed around her wrist. Not rough, not gentle. Certain. The crowd gasped. Phones lifted higher. "You're not walking away," he said quietly. "Not until I know who gave this to you." Her voice shook. "You don't get to do this." "I do," he replied. "Because if I'm right." He glanced at the jacket again. "Then wearing that nearly got you killed." Her blood ran cold. And somewhere behind them, unnoticed by everyone except him, a man lowered his phone and smiled. "Before this goes any further, pause for a second. If someone powerful crossed a line like that in public, would you see it as protection or the beginning of something dangerous? Let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and subscribe, because from here on, nothing stays public for long. He didn't let go of her wrist until the doors closed behind them. The noise of the gala vanished instantly, replaced by silence so sharp it rang in her ears. The hallway was narrow, private, meant for executives who didn't want to be seen choosing sides in public. She pulled her hand free. "You embarrassed me," she said, voice low but shaking. "You had no right." He stopped walking. Slowly. Then he turned. "You think that was embarrassing?" he asked. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because the look on his face now wasn't the one from the lobby. This was colder, sharper, focused. "That jacket," he continued, "doesn't come from a man who lends clothes." She crossed her arms instinctively, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt without it. "He said it was nothing," she replied. "Just a ride. Just a favor." He exhaled through his nose, almost a laugh. "There are no favors stitched into that lining," he said. "Only warnings." She stared at him. "You're not making sense." He stepped closer, not invading her space, but claiming it. "The emblem inside the seam," he said quietly. "You noticed it. That's why you wore it with the lining hidden." Her breath hitched. She hadn't realized he'd seen that. "That mark belongs to a syndicate that doesn't threaten," he continued. "They observe. They mark. And when they move." He paused. "They don't miss." Her heart began to pound, slow and heavy. "You're lying," she whispered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Tapped once. Turned the screen toward her. It was a photo, taken earlier that evening. Her. From across the street. Laughing. Wearing the jacket. Her knees weakened. "That was taken before you even arrived," he said. "Which means they knew where you'd be. And they wanted me to know too." She looked up at him, panic finally cracking through her composure. Why would anyone do that? He studied her face, like he was weighing how much truth she could survive. "Because someone thinks you belong to them," he said. "And tonight was a test." Her voice came out hoarse. "A test for what?" "To see if you were under my protection," he replied. "Or if you were still reachable." The words settled between them like a threat. Reachable. She took a step back. "Then why did you do that out there? Why not tell me quietly?" His jaw tightened. "Because if they're watching, and they are, then they needed to see something very clearly." Her chest tightened. "See what?" "That you are not unguarded," he said. "And not available." She shook her head. "You don't get to decide that." His eyes flickered. "No," he agreed. "But I do get to decide whether you walk out of here alive." The weight of that sentence pressed down on her until the air felt thin. "You think ripping a jacket off me sends that message?" she asked bitterly. "No," he said. "Dragging you into the open did." She stared at him, anger and fear tangling in her chest. "You used me," she said. He didn't deny it. "I protected you," he replied. Silence stretched again. Then softly, "There's a difference. And you're about to learn it." Before she could respond, his phone vibrated. Once. He looked at the screen. His expression changed. Not to fear. To calculation. "They've made their next move," he said. Her voice barely worked. "Who?" He looked back at her. "The man who gave you that jacket," he said. And the reason you should never have accepted it. Her stomach dropped. Because, he added, slipping the phone back into his pocket, he didn't give it to keep you warm. She swallowed hard. Then why? He reached for the door handle. To see which one of us would react first. And as the door opened back into the noise and light of the building, she realized the gala had never been the danger. It was the invitation. The elevator doors closed with a soft chime. She hadn't realized she was holding her breath until the air left her lungs all at once. The CEO stood beside her, one hand braced lightly against the wall, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him. The silence inside the elevator felt heavier than the gala ever had. "How long have you known?" she asked finally. "That someone was circling you," he replied. "Longer than you think." She turned toward him. "Then why didn't you say anything?" He didn't answer immediately. The elevator began to descend. "Because until tonight," he said, "I didn't know which side you'd choose." Her throat tightened. "I didn't choose anything." He glanced at her. "You wore the jacket. That doesn't mean." "It means you accepted it," he said. From a man who knew exactly what he was doing. The elevator slowed. Stopped. The doors slid open into the underground parking level. Empty. Quiet. Too quiet. She hesitated. "You said they were watching," she murmured. "Why bring me here?" "Because this is where they'll expect me to make a mistake," he replied calmly. "And I don't intend to." They stepped out. The sound of her heels echoed against concrete. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly wishing she still had the jacket, no matter who it belonged to. A dark sedan waited near the far column. His driver stood beside it, stiff, alert. "Sir," the man said quietly, "there's been a change." The CEO's gaze sharpened. "Explain." "They didn't follow us from the entrance," the driver said. "They were already here." Her heart lurched. Before she could ask what that meant, a voice cut through the space. "Relax." She froze. The man stepped out from between the concrete pillars like he'd been standing there the whole time. Tall. Easy posture. Hands visible. No rush in his movements. And smiling. She recognized him instantly. The man who had offered her a ride weeks ago when the rain came down hard and sudden. The man who'd laughed easily, spoken softly, draped the jacket over her shoulders without hesitation. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice betraying her. He tilted his head. "You didn't seem to mind earlier." The CEO moved half a step forward. "Enough," he said. "You've been seen." The smile didn't fade. "That was the point," the man replied. His eyes flicked briefly to her. Warm, familiar, unsettling. "You wore it beautifully, by the way." Her stomach turned. "You used me," she whispered. "I tested a boundary," he corrected gently. "You crossed it." The CEO's voice dropped. "You've made your point." "Have I?" the man asked. "Because from where I was standing, you reacted faster than I expected." Silence snapped tight between them. She realized then that this wasn't a confrontation. It was a measurement. "You ripped it off her in front of witnesses," the man continued. "That tells me two things." He raised one finger. "You care." A second finger. "And you don't like being challenged." The CEO didn't deny either. "You don't get to speak to her," he said. The man chuckled softly. "You don't get to decide that." She took a shaky breath. "Why me?" Both men looked at her now. The smile faded. "Because," the man said, "you were never invisible. You were just unclaimed." The word hit her harder than she expected. Unclaimed. "That's not how this works," she said. The man shrugged. "In your world, maybe not." The CEO's eyes hardened. "You're finished here." The man stepped back slowly, palms raised. "Tonight," he agreed. "I just wanted to see how far you'd go." He glanced at her one last time. "Be careful who you stand next to," he said softly. "Power has a way of deciding things for you." Then he turned and disappeared into the shadows between the pillars. No chase. No confrontation. Just the echo of his footsteps and the certainty that this wasn't over. She sagged against the car, legs trembling. "That was him," she whispered. "The man you were talking about." "Yes," the CEO replied. "And you let him walk away." "For now," he said. She looked up at him, fear finally overtaking anger. "What happens now?" He studied her face, the garage lights cutting sharp lines across his features. "Now," he said, "you stop going home." Her breath caught. "You don't get to." "I do," he interrupted calmly. "Because tonight wasn't a warning." He opened the car door. It was permission. She stared at him. "To do what?" she asked. "To come closer," he said. "Or to take you." The words landed between them, heavy and final. She hesitated. Then she stepped into the car. And somewhere above them, unseen and unrecorded, someone was already deciding how to make her choice irreversible. The car pulled out of the garage without urgency. That was the first thing that unsettled her. No rush. No convoy. No dramatic escape. Just smooth motion, city lights sliding across the windows like nothing had changed. She sat rigid in the back seat, hands folded too tightly in her lap. The silence stretched long enough to make her wonder if she was supposed to speak first. "You're taking me home," she said finally. "No," he replied. "One word. Come." Absolute. Her head snapped toward him. "You can't just decide that." He didn't look at her. "I already did." The city thinned as they moved farther from the center. Glass towers giving way to quiet streets, private gates, long stretches of road with no pedestrians. Her pulse began to pick up. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere unreachable," he said. "For now." "For now," she echoed. He glanced at her then, briefly. "You won't like the answer if I tell you how long." She stared out the window, jaw tight. Every instinct screamed that she should have gotten out of the car back at the garage. But she hadn't. And that mattered more than she wanted to admit. They arrived at a compound set back from the road, hidden behind layered security and low lighting that revealed nothing beyond the gate. The car rolled through without stopping. Inside, everything was quiet. Controlled. Too perfect. He exited first. She followed. The building wasn't extravagant. No marble. No gold. Just clean lines, muted tones, and the kind of restraint that came from power that didn't need to announce itself. "This isn't my house," she said. "It's safer," he replied. She crossed her arms. "From who?" "From people who don't knock," he said. Inside, staff moved with silent efficiency. No curiosity. No questions. They already knew better. She noticed that. He gestured down the hall. "There's a room prepared for you." Prepared. The word sat wrong. "I didn't agree to stay," she said. He turned fully toward her now. "You agreed the moment you stepped into the car," he replied. "You just didn't realize it yet." Her breath caught. "That's not consent." "No," he said evenly. "That's consequence." She took a step back. "You said this was about keeping me safe." "And it is," he replied. "But safety requires limits." "On me," she challenged. "On everything," he said. "Your movements. Your visibility. Your access." Her voice rose. "You're talking like I'm a liability." "You are," he said. "To anyone standing near you." The truth in his voice chilled her more than anger would have. "You don't trust me," she said quietly. "I trust you," he corrected. "I don't trust what other people want from you." She shook her head. "You don't get to lock me away because someone else made a move." "I'm not locking you away," he said. "I'm narrowing the field." He paused. "And until I know how deep this goes, you stay where I can see you." Her heart thudded hard against her ribs. "This feels like a cage," she said. "It's a shield," he replied. "You just don't like that it's mine." "Let me ask you something real quick. If you were in her place, would you stay where it feels safe but controlled, or risk everything for freedom outside? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if stories like this keep you hooked, subscribe. This choice won't stay simple for long. Silence stretched again. She realized then that he wasn't trying to convince her. He was setting terms. You'll have access to whatever you need, he continued. Work, communication, comfort, and freedom, she asked. He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Not the kind you had before, he said. That was when she understood the shift. The danger outside hadn't disappeared. It had simply been replaced by something closer. Something quieter. She followed him down the hall anyway. Because fear, she was learning, had many shapes. And right now, this one felt safer than the alternative. Behind them, unseen cameras adjusted their focus. And somewhere beyond the gates, the man who had given her the jacket was already planning how to make her feel the absence of freedom, before she noticed its cost. The room was quiet in a way that didn't belong to sleep. No traffic. No distant sirens. No city hum bleeding through the walls. She stood near the window, watching nothing move beyond the gates. Even the trees seemed carefully placed, decorative, obedient. Someone had laid out clothes on the bed. Neutral colors. Soft fabric. Nothing that belonged to her. She didn't touch them. A soft knock came at the door. She stiffened. "It's me," his voice said. "I'm coming in." He didn't wait for an answer. He stepped inside slowly, eyes scanning the room, not for her comfort, but for risks. Habits. Escape routes. "You won't sleep," he said. She crossed her arms. "You don't know that." "I do," he replied. "This is the first night." She looked at him. "Do all your guests get this level of attention?" "You're not a guest," he said. "And you're not a prisoner." "That's convenient," she replied. He ignored that. "There are rules," he said calmly. "They're temporary." Her jaw tightened. "Everything you say is temporary." "No," he said. "Some things become permanent if mishandled." He handed her a phone. Not hers. "This one works inside the compound," he continued. "And with a limited list." She stared at it. "You're serious." "I'm careful," he corrected. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You're controlling." He didn't flinch. "Control is what keeps you breathing tonight," he said. Silence followed. Not hostile. Heavy. "Did he contact you?" she asked suddenly. His eyes lifted. "Who?" "The man with the jacket." A pause. "One attempt," he said. "Indirect." Her chest tightened. And I blocked it." "You didn't tell me." "You didn't need to know," he replied. Fear spreads faster when shared. She shook her head. "You don't get to decide what I can handle." "I do," he said quietly, "when it affects whether you wake up tomorrow." The words landed harder than he intended. She looked away. For the first time since the gala, she felt tired. Not physically. Mentally. He noticed. "You can hate me later," he said. "Tonight you rest." He turned to leave. At the door he stopped. "There's one more rule," he said. "If he finds a way to reach you." "I'll tell you," she finished. "No," he corrected. "You won't respond." She looked at him. "And if I do?" His voice lowered. "Then everything changes." He left. The door closed without a sound. She sat on the edge of the bed, phone heavy in her palm. The silence pressed in. Minutes passed. And the screen lit up. A message. From a number not on the list. Just 3 words. "You chose wrong." Her breath caught. "Let me ask you something. If you were in her place, would you tell him about that message, or keep it secret just to feel like you still had control? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And subscribe, because from here on, every choice costs something." Her fingers hovered over the screen. She didn't reply. She didn't delete it either. She locked the phone and set it face down on the nightstand. Outside the room, unseen, a camera adjusted its angle. And down the hall, the CEO stood still for a moment longer than necessary. Because even he knew The most dangerous part of protection, I believed it was enough. She didn't sleep. Every time her eyes closed, the message burned behind her lids. You chose wrong. It wasn't a threat. It was a verdict. Morning came without sunlight. The compound woke quietly. No alarms, no rush, just the soft choreography of people trained not to ask questions. A knock sounded at her door. "Breakfast," a woman's voice said. She opened it to find a tray already waiting. Tea, fruit, bread, careful portions. Like everything else here. She carried it inside, setting it down untouched. The phone sat where she'd left it. Face down. Silent. Until it wasn't. A vibration. Short. Sharp. Another message. "He's lying to you." Her breath caught. She glanced instinctively toward the corners of the room. No obvious cameras. No blinking lights. Still, she lowered her voice as if someone might hear her thoughts. "Don't respond." That had been the rule. She paced once. Twice. Then the phone vibrated again. "Ask him about the garage." Her stomach tightened. Footsteps approached outside her door. She barely had time to lock the phone before the handle turned. He entered without ceremony, dressed as he had been the night before. Controlled, composed, untouched by exhaustion. "You're awake," he said. She nodded. "You said I'd be." His eyes flicked briefly to the tray. Untouched. "Did he reach you again?" he asked. The question was too casual. Too precise. She hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. But he saw it. His gaze sharpened. Not angry, not surprised. Disappointed. "Yes," she said quietly. "This morning." Silence fell between them. "How?" he asked. She held up the phone. "I don't know." He took it from her hand, movements calm, practiced. Scrolled once. Stopped. For the first time since she'd known him, something flickered across his face. Not fear. Recognition. "So he finally stopped playing," he murmured. She looked at him. "You knew he'd find a way." "Yes," he replied. "I just hoped it wouldn't be this soon." Her chest tightened. What does the garage have to do with anything? He looked up sharply. "Did you respond?" he asked. "No." "Did you ask me about it?" She swallowed. "I'm asking now." His jaw set. "The garage is where I realized I'd underestimated him," he said. "And where I decided you couldn't leave." Anger surged. "You decided that without telling me." "I decided it because telling you would have made you resist," he said evenly. "And resistance gets people hurt." She stared at him. "So you lie to keep me compliant?" "I withhold," he corrected. "There's a difference." She shook her head. "This isn't protection anymore." He stepped closer. "Then what is it?" She didn't answer. Because part of her already knew. The phone vibrated again. He didn't look at it. She did. "You see now. He needs you afraid." Her hands trembled. He noticed. "Give it to me," he said. She didn't. That was the moment. The air shifted. The balance tipped. "Don't do this," he warned quietly. "You said choices matter," she replied. "This is mine." He exhaled slowly, like someone restraining something dangerous. "You don't understand what you're inviting." She met his gaze. "Neither do you." He reached for the phone. She pulled it back. That was all it took. The calm fractured. He didn't grab her. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "From now on you don't carry that." Her heart pounded. "You can't just." "I can," he said. "And I will." He took the phone from her hand. This time, she didn't resist. Because she realized something worse than losing it. She'd already started measuring her decisions by his reactions. He turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. "You think he's offering you freedom," he said. "He's offering you leverage." He paused. "And you're already paying for it." The door closed. She stood there, empty-handed. And for the first time since stepping into the car, she wondered whether silence had ever really been her choice. Let me ask you this. If you were in her position, would you keep pushing back for control, or start obeying just to survive? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And subscribe, because the next choice changes everything. She sat slowly on the edge of the bed. Outside her door, guards had shifted positions. Inside her chest, something hardened, because now she understood the truth neither man had said out loud. She wasn't being protected from danger anymore. She was being positioned inside it. And someone, somewhere, was about to force her hand. The first thing she noticed was the silence. Not the controlled quiet of the compound, but absence. No guards outside her door. No footsteps pacing the hallway. No hum of surveillance adjusting its focus. For the first time since she arrived, the house felt empty. That should have felt like freedom. It didn't. She stood slowly, heart pounding, and opened the door. The hallway was clear. Too clear. Her breath caught as she stepped forward, barefoot on cold marble. The lights were on, but dimmed, like the house itself was holding its breath. She reached the end of the corridor and froze. The front doors were open. Wide. Unsecured. Her pulse thundered. This wasn't a mistake. He didn't make mistakes. She moved cautiously, every instinct screaming that this was wrong. Outside, the city waited. Normal. Alive. Untouched by whatever storm had been circling her for days. She took one step forward. And stopped. A phone sat on the console table near the entrance. Her phone. The one he had taken. The screen was lit. One message. He's letting you go. Ask yourself why. Her chest tightened painfully. She picked it up. Before she could think, another message arrived. Because now you're dangerous. Footsteps sounded behind her. She turned. He stood at the end of the hall, jacket gone, sleeves rolled, looking nothing like the man who'd dragged her into the open days ago. You should leave, he said. Her voice shook. You're just letting me walk out? Yes. That's it, she demanded. After everything? He studied her carefully. You wanted freedom, he said. This is what it looks like. Her laugh came out brittle. You don't do anything without a reason. A pause. Then he said it. Because keeping you close was protection, he said. Letting you go is a test. Her stomach dropped. A test for who? For him, he replied. And for you. She shook her head. You're using me again. No, he said quietly. I'm trusting you. The word hit harder than any threat. Why now? She asked. Because if he reaches out, he said, you'll know who he really is. And if he doesn't, then I'll know who you are. Silence stretched between them. Outside, a car passed. Laughter echoed faintly from somewhere down the street. Life. Continuing. She looked at the open doors again. Then back at him. You think I'll come back, she said. I think, he replied, that power always leaves a mark. And people don't walk away from that unchanged. Her phone vibrated. A new message. She didn't look at it. Instead, she stepped past him. For a moment, just one, his hand lifted slightly. Not to stop her. To see if she would hesitate. She didn't. She walked out into the daylight. The doors closed behind her with a soft, final sound. Outside, the city swallowed her instantly. She stood on the sidewalk, heart racing, phone heavy in her hand. Then she looked. The message was simple. You're free now. Meet me. She stared at the screen. Freedom. Choice. Control. Behind her, unseen, the CEO watched from the window as she disappeared into the crowd. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You played it well. Let's see which one of us she chooses. He locked the screen. And for the first time since this began, he wasn't sure he'd won. Because power didn't always mean possession. Sometimes, it meant letting go and waiting to see what came back. She stopped at the corner. The light changed. And with one step, she chose a direction. If this were you, would you go back to the man who controlled your safety? or follow the one who promised your freedom? Tell me in the comment. Comment part 2 if you want to see what she chooses.